Got that checklist. I feel like Santa. I'm going to check that sucker twice, but we got a lot to talk about. What is up, Finn fans? The Miami Dolphins offseason checklist. Now, I'm going to give you things that they need to focus on, but I'm not going to go into detail on each of these things because those are in itself their own videos. Like I said, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 100K. But I'm going to be doing all off season. I have so many, like I have a list over here of videos I need to do. I got a list over here of videos I need to do. It's going to be a lot, but we are going to talk about the off season checklist. Now, technically, I'll say it one more time. Technically, the off season doesn't really start till after the Super Bowl, and the new year doesn't start till March 12th. Now, real quick, I'm going to give you a little rundown of the schedule and how it works, right? February 18th is the franchise tag period opens. Essentially, you can franchise tag, transition tag, wherever the tags you want to do. Start on the 18th, right? Tags can begin designing. Teams can begin designating franchise tags, transitional tags at 4 p.m. for the next 2 weeks. Players who are set to hit free agency can be blocked from reaching the open market. At this time, I will go over, I do every year, will the Dolphins franchise tag somebody, yada, yada, and I'll talk about the difference between franchise tag and transitional tag. Then you have the 24th to the 3rd of March is the NFL Combine. Then you have March 4th is the Just so you know, a little backstory. I was sleeping last night, and I bit my tongue in my sleep. Hurts like the dickens. So if I'm slurring my words or sound like what is wrong with Doug, I have a big old bite mark on the side of my tongue. I guess clench my jaw when I'm sleeping, whatever. It hurts. March 4th is the end of the franchise tag. So essentially you have this period. March 10th, legal tampering period. That's where it's so-and-so has agreed to terms and so-and-so, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. March 12th is when the league year opens and all of those so-and-so's things happening or trades happening get signed and become official. March 30th to the 2nd is the annual league meeting. Will there be rule changes? Will things be implemented? Will we go to a 19-week season with 18 games? I don't know. April 7th is off-season workouts begin for teams with new coaches. So that's OTAs and stuff like that. April 18th is the deadline for restricted free agents. Restricted free agents have until this date to sign offer sheets from their teams. If a player does not sign, their rights stay with the team. And if he doesn't sign, he doesn't receive an accrued season in the following year. I will talk about what the difference is between unrestricted free agents, restricted free agents, all that stuff. April 24th and to the 26th is the NFL draft at Green Bay, Wisconsin. May 1st is the fifth-year option deadline. The schedule is probably going to be mid-May. There's a lot of stuff, right? Training camp, yada, yada. But those are essentially what will happen this offseason. So there's a lot to talk about. So I came up with a checklist. I'm like, what do the Dolphins need to do essentially up to free agency, right? That's my thought process as of right now. What are some of the things the Dolphins need to decide on before they hit free agency? So obviously, there's things they need to do for the draft, checklist-wise. There's things they need to do for agency checklist-wise. But I am looking at the team as it is right now, and I came up with a checklist of essentially, you need to figure some things out. Because, again, status quo. I'm about to make a shirt that says status quo. They're sticking with Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier. Me, personally, I think this is the year. This is it. If you do not get to the playoffs and win a playoff game, you're fired. I don't care if they go to 12-5, if they go 13-4. If you make the playoffs and you get bounced in the first round, aka the Vikings, the Chargers, the Steelers, the Bucks, the Packers, all these teams, Mike McDaniel and Grier are fired. So there's a lot that they need to fix, because they're in a situation right now that they put themselves in with these contracts, with these players, and with the coaching staff. So we're going to run down this checklist. I don't have anything to pop up to be like, number one, blah, blah, blah. So you're just going to have to listen to my dumb mouth. But number one on my checklist is they need to figure out the cap space. Because all of a sudden, all of these moves that the Dolphins have made when it came to these future contracts and all these other things are starting to come to fruition, and they're starting to add on to the cap space. So as of right now, where the Miami Dolphins sit, they are at a negative $16.9 million in cap space. They have no money at all. If you remember when last time I talked about their cap space, I said they had 11 million. Then they made some moves for these future contracts. Obviously, there's things that happened there and other things activated in the new year, obviously in 2025. People got paid, things happened. They are sitting at a negative $16.9 million in cap space. They need to figure that out, first and foremost. Now, last year the cap went up by 30 million. Now it happens for all the teams. This year I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up by, they say 40 to 50 million. Because of the Netflix games and because of the Amazon Prime games and then the Peacock games, all that stuff, playoff games, it'll go up. So that'll probably put Miami at around 30-something million in cap space. But again, all teams will get that huge chunk of change. And if you look at some of these top teams, they have like 100 million in cap space. And some of these teams are actually not bad teams that need a lot of help, which is absolutely craziness. Like the Washington Commanders are going to have $96 million in cap space. New England has 125, and that's probably why Variable's like, ooh, I'd love to go there. Minnesota has 73 million, but Minnesota has a lot of free agents hitting the market. The Chargers have 77 million. Like all of these teams have all this money. And you scroll all the way to the bottom. There's Miami, 16. Miami, Seattle, Atlanta in the negatives, and you got Dallas and Buffalo, 7 million. You know, there's a lot going on that these teams have to figure it out. Obviously, Miami's one of them that you have to figure out your cap space. You got Tua Tagovailoa getting with a $39.4 million cap hit. You have Bradley Chubb with a $29.3 million cap hit, Tyreek Hill with a $28.7 million cap hit, and Teron Armstead with a $22.4 million cap hit. Now, Teron Armstead might retire, so I don't know what the implications of his cap hit will be if he retires. That might help out drastically with that negative 16.9 million. When I get more information on that, I might ask Omar Kelly, who will be on tomorrow. I promise. Things happen, plans change, but he will be on tomorrow, so I will ask him and pick his brain if Teron retires and all that stuff. But they need to figure it out. Whether it's Stephen Ross, who is the guy who brought these guys back, he's gonna have to bust out that checkbook again and start signing roster bonuses to these guys to open up cap space, right? There's that. Obviously, there's other things that go into the cap space that are on this checklist. Who to resign? Who are you going to resign? We have no money right now, so let me go to the next one. Cuts. There's some guys who are going to get cut. I think Raheem Mostert might get cut. I think Durham Smythe will get cut. I think Jake Bailey will get cut. All of these cuts will equate to probably like around 10 million for those three. It does help, but there's cuts that need to happen. Also, extensions. You can give guys extensions that probably need them, and you can lower their cap hit by giving them contract extensions like Sealer. Brewer has one more year on his contract. Jonnu Smith has one more year on his contract. Jordan Brooks has one more year on his contract. I named those four guys because they had really good seasons, especially Sealer. You give these guys contract extensions, their cap hit lowers, and you got a little bit more structure. You add another year on to their contract with the out being moved down a year. Can really help the cap space there. Who to re-sign? Now you got Dotson, you got Javon Holland, you got Calais Campbell. There's not many, and I went and I looked. There's not many players I would re-sign. Like Kendall Lamb, I think is going to retire. He had back surgery, and you got other guys like Liam Eichenberg and Anthony Walker Jr. and all these guys, Jordan Poyer, I wouldn't resign them. And that's, again, all of these things, who to resign, who to give extensions to, who to cut, these are all things that are going to have their own individual videos where I tell you who I would do these things for and how it would help or implicate the cap. Other things on my list, figure out the assistant coaching situation. They already fired Danny Crossman. They already fired Wes Walker, so you need to find a new special team coach and a new wide receiver coach. I'll have a video out this week with some ideas of the coaching system and who to add and all that stuff. Will we need to find a new defensive coordinator? Is Anthony Weaver possibly going to the Chicago Bears or the New Orleans Saints? Will other coaches be fired? Will the offensive line coach be fired? Will the linebackers coach be fired? Will the secondaries coach be fired? Obviously, these guys are going to try to shake things up because, you know, there's a issue with the locker room and all that stuff. I'm going to talk to Omar about that and see if I can get more out of him about all that information. You might have more assistant coaches get fired. You need to address that, and you need to change it. I have 2 special team coaches in mind. I think I'll talk about that Friday. I have 2 special team coaches I have in mind that I'd love the Dolphins to add. So, you know, that's another thing that the Dolphins really have to figure out. Another thing on my list, you got to figure out the backup quarterback situation. Now, I'm going to talk more about the playoff games on Thursday. Yes, on Thursday when I do my picks for the divisional round, which some very good games coming in the divisional round. Again, I will be live for the Ravens-Bills game, so please come hang out. It's like Sam Darnold played like garbage. Is he going to demand a huge contract all of a sudden, or will he, you know, take much less? You know, Vikings probably sitting there like, whoa, you know what? We're going to stick with JJ McCarthy and go in a different direction. Not saying the Dolphins should spend a lot because they don't have enough. And again, that's where this checklist comes in. And that's where I have a cap space video coming out because they have to figure this out if they want any type of competitiveness in this season and they want to save their jobs. But you got to figure out the backup quarterback situation. You got to figure out the offense, right? That's something that Mike McDaniel has to do, and that's on his checklist. Is you got to figure out the offense. You got to figure out what went wrong. What can I do to make it better? Obviously, the offensive line is a thing that needs to be addressed, and these are all things I'll talk about in free agency and the draft and all that stuff. But he needs to sit back and look at what happened. Why did our offense go from 1st to 22nd? Why was I forcing, you know, obviously we know why they were forcing screens and short passes because they felt like, oh, we don't have to worry about the offensive line because we'll just get the ball out quicker. Defenses picked up on that. Like they literally did. There has been coordinators of other teams who have come out and said that. We don't have to worry about them trying any different things because they are essentially worried about the offensive line and they're just going to have quick passes. So we just got to jump the routes. That's it. We got to jam them, jump the routes. It has nothing to do with Tua. It has to do with the ineptitude that they had at not figuring out the offensive line to let plays develop. So the opposing defenses knew that. Oh, we're playing Miami this week. Just press the receivers. They all got short, under 6 foot receivers. Press them. And if they do screens, just shoot the backfield and make the tackle for loss. That's all they had to do for the Dolphins because we never faked a screen and threw it over the top. Our run game was non-existent, so play action didn't work. So Mike McDaniel on his checklist, and obviously on the Dolphins, he needs to figure that crap out. There's a lot that needs to be figured out. But for the offseason going into free agency, because again, in free agency, I'm going to talk about team needs and positions and all that stuff. Same thing with the draft after free agency is done. They got to figure out the cap space, because they put themselves in this situation. And if you don't want to get fired and have a horrible year, like if they start out like 2-4, you know, they're probably going to get fired. And we'll have an interim head coach, whether it's Anthony Weaver, whether it's Darrell Bevel, whether it's whoever, we'll have an interim head coach and the GM will get fired. And then we'll probably sell at the trade deadline. You got to figure that out because right now you're saying that's negative 16.9. That ain't good. And last I checked, they were at 11. I was like, that ain't bad. And then transactions happened, and we're not in a good situation. They need to figure that out. Then they need to figure out what they're doing with the players, and they need to figure out what they're doing with the coaching, and they need to figure out what they're doing with the offensive playing. I would love to say Mike McDaniel needs to figure out who's calling the plays, but we all know he said, if there's ever a problem with the play calling, I'm going to be the first one who's going to give it up because da-da-da. There's a problem with your play calling. You're not focusing on the right things, and you're trying too hard. So you need to figure it out. But that's what I got. If I missed anything, what other checklists do you have going into free agency? Obviously, like I said multiple times, free agency has its own checklists. The draft has their own checklist. There's all these different things. Again, I have so much planned. You think, oh, the season's over. I get to relax. Or, oh, the playoffs are here and the Dolphins aren't in there. I get to relax. Nope. I have so much content for you guys. The only time that the content lulls for me is that gap in between mandatory mini camp and training camp. That like month, there's like a huge lull. And instead of doing like 5 to 6 videos a week, I do like 4, which is still a lot for me. So you got me until what, June, end of June, with 5 videos a week. Hit the subscribe button. Road to 100K. Before we get out of here, I want to give you the fact of the day on January 14th. On this date in 1973, Miami never trailed while this is essentially the fact that the trivia we got yesterday. On this date in 1973, Miami never trailed while closing out the first and still only engineered 2024 calendar year perfect season in NFL history with a 14-7 win over Washington in the Super Bowl. No, that's different because then the next year was the Vikings one. So we did it on today. But other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow with Omar Kelly, and then you will get the picks video. And then you will get me talking about the coaches. I think that's the order I have it. I don't know. You got a lot. But other than that, like usual, stay classy. And fins out.